you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. As a reminder, you can follow us on both Instagram and Facebook. Just go to Viewpoint with Father John. And I do enjoy getting the messages that you send to me there. So please continue to send those messages. It's a lot of fun having the conversations back and forth. And if that's not enough fun for you, you can also find me on Instagram at Father John Reed. And remember, that's the proper Irish spelling of R-E-I-D. Anything less would be uncivilized and non-Irish. And so I guess that's just repeating the same thing, isn't it? So just join us there. Send me some messages. Keep it non-political, please. Thank you. Because there's enough of that on Twitter, to say the least, of which I'm guilty as well. So having said that, all of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And folks, I'd like to tell you about the best pharmacy in Southern California, which is Claremont Pharmacy in the city of Claremont. It's on the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway. Goodness, I don't know where I am tonight. So you can definitely go see Dr. Nikki Ho, who owns that establishment. Also, they have vaccines. They have the Moderna and the Johnson & Johnson. So if you still need to get vaccinated, that's a good place to go. It's nice and clean, and she takes good time with you. So definitely do that. Also, if you're looking for a good barber, go to Uppercut Barber Shop over in Pomona on Town and Foothill. And you can say hi to my friends, Sam, who cuts my hair, or Leo, who owns the place. But they'll give you a great haircut. You'll be glad you went there. And then finally, you looking for a good DJ service? Lakeside DJ Service. You can get that. You can get to them on their website, which is lakesidedjservices.com. I just was looking at Frank through the window to make sure I got this right, because I'm not hitting on all cylinders tonight. But also, they have included now a photo booth. And so if you have a wedding or something coming up, they're a lot of fun. That seems to be the new thing these days when I do a lot of weddings at the reception afterwards. They have these photo booths, and you get these great photos that you keep forever with, or unless you guys break up, then you can burn them. You have stuff for the fireplace, so it's good either way. You get you coming or going. But anyhow, it's run by our sound engineer Frank, who really is a great guy, and you know how well he does this show, so you know he'll take care of your event perfectly, absolutely perfectly. Few things going on. For those of you who've been following me on social media, you know I have some medical stuff going on. I just next Tuesday I'll be having a minor heart procedure. They want to prove I have a heart, I guess. So just to let you know, if I don't answer emails for a few days, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just recovering a little bit. You know, you can probably hear my voice is not what it normally is, and so they're finally trying to get down to causes and conditions of everything that's going on. So although I didn't want to be a willing participant, they have me as a patient next Tuesday. But I will be back next Thursday. And, you know, I want to thank everyone who's been filling in for me and helping me while I'm going through some of these challenges. Dr. John Smith has been a real help, and Frank's always there for me. And Gabby makes sure I take the medication with or without a beating. So glad to have that. A few things tonight. I want to take a little thing from my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. Yes, if you don't have your copy, by all means, go out and get one from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or another place. Be sure to buy it. Don't steal it. Bad karma. Bad juju, as we say. But I want to talk about our real self and discovering who we really are. And there's a story I have in here. It's an old Eastern story. And so I'm going to share it with you right now. Excuse me, I hope my voice lasts through this. And it starts with a paragraph that I'm reminded of an Eastern story of the egg of the golden eagle, which was found by a farmer. Apparently, the mother eagle fell upon misfortune and was unable to return to the nest to care for the egg. So the farmer took the egg into the hen house and placed it under a chicken in hopes that the egg would eventually hatch. After a few weeks, with the hen sitting on the egg, it did indeed hatch along with the eggs of the other chicks. Even though the eagle looked different, the hen raised the eagle as one of her own. So the eagle learned to scratch at the ground for food and never learned to fly, for the mother, being a chicken, was not a bird of flight. One day, while the eagle was in the farmyard scratching for food and was with his adopted brothers and sisters, a great golden eagle flew over the farm. With amazement, he watched as the eagle gracefully stretched out its wings and glided with the wind. With great reverence and awe, he asked, "What kind of bird is that?" The chickens around him said, "That is an eagle, and he belongs to the sky. We are chickens, and we belong to the ground, for we have not been given the gift of flight." And so the little golden eagle went back to scratching the ground for food like the other chicks did. For while in his soul he was an eagle, in his mind he was just a farmyard chicken. And the reason I start off with that, sometimes we believe other people's stories about us more than we believe our true story about ourselves. And in our spiritual journey, part of our spiritual journey is becoming fully aware of who we really are. Not the different narratives that have taken us through life, but the true narrative of what we were designed, what we were created to be. Now, I know there's some people who absolutely believe that life is already planned out before you're born and there's a certain trajectory you're going to go. And I'm not going to say they're wrong. I'm just of a different school of thought. I really believe that God is experiencing new things with us as we experience new things. And this is part of God's joy, is new experiences. Because I imagine that creating and running a universe, you got to have a little entertainment as well. And anyone who's watched my life, I hope I've supplied God with plenty of entertainment, because there's been a lot there that sure could go down as that. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean I don't believe that there's divine guidance. I believe there's that as well. But I think we work in cooperation with God. We're co-creators with God. It talks about that in the book of Genesis and through different parts of the Bible, how we have so many gifts given to us to really be an expression of life that God does for us. But along the way, something tends to happen with a lot of us, not all of us, but with a lot of us, where we stop looking to see who we really are, and instead we try to become who we think other people would have us be. Now, on one level, let's take a look at this from a couple different points of view. We think, well, you got to get along in society, so maybe you should do more to be like how people expect you to be. But in doing that, I do believe in being courteous. I do believe in getting along with others. But do you have to set yourself out to do that? And I don't think so. I think you could be true to yourself and still be easy to get along with. I think often we're difficult to get along with because we're so resentful at ourselves and frustrated for not becoming who we really believe we are in our heart. And so my way of being taught was that our great spiritual adventure is to uncover, discover, and discard, as my friend Chuck Chamberlain used to say, to get down to our true self. What is the real design for living that we carry within our DNA? What is it that we are specifically here to be and do? See, one of the problems we have in life is we become human doers instead of human beings. We get into doing things, we get into trying to be something we think someone would have us be, and that's being a doer instead of being a human being, which is just being who we really are, discovering it. It's a great discovery. And I know in my own experience, I went for many years trying to be what I thought other people wanted me to be. And I found that it affected my relationships. It affected my friendships because I never did really feel close to anybody because I knew that they really liked the image I was showing, not who I was. And it wasn't that I was trying to be phony. It was just I was just trying to get along in life, and I didn't know that as myself I was enough. Now, when I say that I'm enough, I'm not talking about the egotistical where we run around and say, I'm enough, and that means I have the right to step on your toes. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm talking about being enough that God created me for a purpose. God created you for a purpose. And so my job is to find out, what is that about? Am I a barnyard chicken? And if I am, that's okay. Am I a golden eagle? If I am, that's okay. But I have to figure out what kind of bird I am. And that means there has to be some self-examination. I have to go beyond what people are saying, because people are always going to be talking. They do. For every person that likes you, there'll be someone else who doesn't like you. That's just life, okay? Some people like avocados, some people don't. Why they don't, I don't know, but they don't. It's just, it's just like not everybody could be Irish. Anyhow, I'll get off that track for a second there. So in making this discovery, sometimes we find out that we've been living as a barnyard chicken when we're really an eagle. And when we discover that we're really an eagle, that doesn't automatically change everything. Just like in the story I just read to you out of my book, even if that little chick knew that was a golden eagle, it didn't yet know that it could fly. It didn't yet know its own freedoms. So part of what we have to do is to discover what the freedoms are. We also have to find out what our limitations are. Now, I know there's some schools of thought that say, oh, there are no limitations. You could just go on forever and ever. Okay. And I'm not saying that's wrong either. I'm just saying I'm of a different school of thought. And I do think that there is right law and wrong use of right law. And we pay a price either way. Let me digress for just a moment with that idea. Because you don't have to know the whole thing, but you have to know enough to find out who you are and use that correctly. Case in point, I want you to consider for a moment electricity. Now, electricity, it could light your house. It could warm your food. It could fry your fanny. It could do a lot of different stuff. If you use it correctly, you can light your house. You can cook your food. If you use it incorrectly, you could fry your own fanny. Now, the law doesn't get angry with you. Electricity doesn't get angry with you. And you don't have to be an electrician to make use of the electricity. You just got to know where the switch is. And there are other people who could tell you all about how the electricity works, how it goes from this, talk about Tesla, talk about Edison. You don't have to do all that to discover how to use electricity. You just got to know where the switch is. Well, the same with us. Okay? Where are your switches? What turns you on? What turns you off? What brings you joy in life? And what brings you misery? Chances are, if you're in a line of work, that you're in a line of work because that's where people told you should be, and you find that you are just really miserable, well, you might be using the right law in the wrong way. You may not have turned the right switch yet. And you're not bad for that. You're not done for that. It just means there needs to be discovery. And so when we come back from commercial, we'll talk a little bit about these discoveries and getting the right voltage to make our life work. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John on KCAA Radio, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
SRD Heating and Air Conditioning takes this special time to salute the San Bernardino men and women in uniform who've answered the call for our freedoms. Let's give them the hero's welcome they deserve as they fought hard to restore peace around the world. American troops are our angels of protection, so stand up and salute them proudly. This message is courtesy of our good friends at SRD Heating and Air Conditioning in San Bernardino, where they're always working hard to keep our community moving in a positive direction.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
And welcome back, friends. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed, and a shout out to all the listeners that tune in all around the world. Thank you that you take the time to listen to the show. I'm deeply honored by that, and I got some letters this week that really touched me deeply, and so I thank you. It's kind of neat when I come to the radio station and there's envelopes waiting for me, so it's kind of a neat thing. It feels good, and even though I enjoy your emails, sometimes these nice little cards that you send really touch me deeply. It's kind of nice to know that it's making a difference in somebody's life. So for those who have sent those to me, thank you so much. That was really thoughtful of you. And a quick shout out to Frank, the best engineer in the business. He's making sure that we're going over the airways just right. And so, again, I want to remind you of his DJ service, Lakeside DJ Service at lakesidedjservice.com. So, definitely there. Okay, when we went to break, we're talking about finding the right voltage for our life. And I know that sounds a little corny, but I hope you'll hang with me for a little bit on this. Because if you don't have the right voltage, you can't get what you need to have done. Not because there's something wrong with electricity, but because the conductor is not doing what it needs to do. You may have the wrong size capacitor for what you're trying to do. Just like, if you try to plug in a hair dryer that we use here in America in one of the sockets in Europe, you're going to blow up your air conditioner because they're not fastened right. Well, the same with our life. If you are going through life trying to be something other than what you're designed to be, well, there's a reason why it doesn't feel right. It's not the right voltage. It's not the stream of power that you're supposed to be having. And God's not punishing you for that, and neither is the universe, which are kind of synonymous. But because to be who you are, you have to be plugged into the right socket, so to speak. So how do we do that? Well, one of the things I have found to be very helpful is that once in a while I do a list of what I like, what I don't like. What is important to me, what's not important to me. What makes me feel good, what makes me feel bad. Now, why am I doing that? Because it changes constantly. I've shared this on the show other times that my friend Chuck Chamberlain used to say that we're constantly changing people. And I remember being at a talk he was giving and says, you never heard me speak before. And I'm thinking, I just heard you a couple of months ago. What do you mean I haven't heard you before? And then he followed up by saying, I'm that person, plus all the experience and lessons added to me from that time to this make me somebody new. So I'm somebody else tonight. And for the first time, it made sense. And he says, it's the same thing as with my wife. She's the same person she was yesterday with yesterday's experience and lesson added, making her somebody new today. So my job is to find out who's this new person sitting across from me, and it keeps the relationship very much alive. And I sat with that for a long time. That made sense to me. Well, I look back over my life. I'm not the same guy I was when I graduated high school. Anybody who knew me in high school could tell you that. I can remember going to my 20-year high school reunion, none of your business how many years ago that was. But when I did go, let's just say we've had a few reunions since then after it. And I'm sitting at this table with these people that I'd gone to high school with, some to junior high with. And they're talking about who I used to be and what that was like. And I didn't realize how different I was now compared to them then until I heard them describing. And one of them even went to a parish where I was serving at the time because he just had to see I had really become a priest. And he told my parishioners that he used to be terrified of me. Now, this was a huge guy who after he left our high school, he threw the football for USC. So he's a big guy. And he was one of the star quarterbacks. I won't say who because I don't have his permission to mention him. Otherwise, I'd be glad to mention him. And he's telling the people about what I was like in high school and why he was so afraid of me, that I was this tough guy. And I finally said to him, they've never seen that side of me. They only know me as Father John. That's not the person I am today. I'm that person with all the experience and lessons added to make me somebody new today. Okay? And that just drove it home to me what Chuck Chamberlain had been telling me about being a constantly changing person. So that means I have to find out who I am now, not just who the other person is. And so I ask you tonight, who are you now? Look back over your life. Have you ever had anything, a particular food that you really liked at one stage of your life? And then later on you wondered how you could like that food because you just can't stand it anymore, or vice versa? Vice versa. Look at coffee. Coffee, as I almost knocked my coffee over and take out my computer. Coffee is an acquired taste. Okay. Not very many people start off with their first sip of coffee and really love it. They get to like it by either some cream and sugar, or they learn to drink it black, or however they're going to do it. That required a sip of coffee, sorry. And there was nothing wrong with the coffee or the way they drank it. It's just as their taste changed, so that how they had their coffee. And as I discover who I am now, there's nothing wrong with that coffee. I've changed some. My taste buds have changed some. Every 7 years, you're not even who you used to be physically. Every 7 years, your body has changed every cell within it, and you're absolutely a brand new person. That's scientific. And that's how I get more gorgeous every 7 years, I'm telling you. And so some people probably send me a note on that one. I get over it, right? But if that's true in nature, that physiologically, we're constantly changing. And we see that in plant life, in animal life, and in people life. Why wouldn't it be the same spiritually and emotionally? It is the same. We're constantly changing. There are things I believe now that I didn't believe 40 years ago. And there's things I believed 40 years ago I couldn't believe now. Now, back then it made sense. From where I was, that made perfect sense at the time. So there was nothing wrong with it. It was where I was. But if I would have stayed right where I was and have not grown, well, that's a form of cancer. What is a cancer? They're cells that have stopped learning how to regenerate and how to change. And so it brings illness because it's not going with the rest of the system to the new body. Well, spiritually, if we're stuck in that rut, it's kind of a soul sickness, a soul cancer. And we must constantly be ready to grow. Does that mean everything we believe today is wrong? Not one bit. It just means we're looking at it from a different point of view. As Richard Rohr says, every point of view is a point from a view. And so wherever your view is now, I'll give you a case in point for those of you in the Inland Empire. If you're sitting in Redlands and you look out, you can only see so far. You see some buildings and such. You can look up and see the mountains. However, if you start going up into Big Bear, Crestline, and some of those places, you can look down and see an entire valley. A valley you can't see from Redlands. And the valley's there the whole time. You're in the middle of it. But from your perspective, you can't see it. And so as we raise the elevation of our sight, our spiritual sight, our emotional sight, we make great discoveries that are incredible, that had been there the whole time. We just weren't in a position to see them. And there was nothing wrong with the place where we were. We just didn't have enough view. If you've lived in a valley your entire life and never been up to the mountains, you have no idea how beautiful that valley might be. So it's called raising our consciousness. And that's what discovering our true self is. It's raising our consciousness to find out who we truly are and how to function with that information. So as I started to say earlier, so if we inventory our lives a little bit, now there's several ways to do it. I know 12-step programs have theirs, and it's a fantastic way. So I'm not faulting that. I'm a big believer in their methods of doing it. There's also other methods of taking a look at, well, there's the MMPI, which is a psychological test. There is just a whole lot of things you can do to see where you stand. And you'll find out that there really are no purists. Some people say, are you introverted or extroverted? Well, most people are a combination of both. Some people lean more towards being introverted. Some people lean more towards being extroverted. In my case, I'm one of those people, I like a lot of time alone, but I like people too. But if I'm around people too long, it drains all my energy. So I need to get some silent time to recharge. At the same time, if I spend too much time in silent time and not around people, that drains my battery as well. And so I have to go out and get connected to get more energy from there. So it's not a purist system. It's learning how to bring things together and find out what the different combinations are. Some people think there's only one way to make a sandwich. No, there's several ways to make a sandwich. And sometimes it'll taste very good. Sometimes you think, well, that's not one I'm going to try again. Okay. But you don't know if you don't try the sandwich. If you don't experiment a little bit. If you don't make a little bit of a mess. And if your life is a mess, then just admit it. It's a mess. That's okay. Because in order to get out of that mess, you have to first recognize the mess in the first place. And so if you recognize what that mess is, now you can become open for something different. And it's amazing how, and it's been said by sages throughout the ages, hey, I made a rhyme, that, when we're constantly looking for that change and accepting who we are, new discoveries get made. But we can't see it through our old self. We have to see it through the new eyes. And looking through new eyes, we have greater vision. Okay? I look at how my vision's changed through the years. When I was a teenager, I didn't need glasses. Now I'm darn near blind, Not quite that bad, but you know how it is. And if I were to insist that my eyes were the same as they were in high school, while I may believe it with everything in me, the facts say contrary to that. It's not like that at all. So either I can keep fighting, saying, no, it has to be like this, has to be like this, has to be like this. Or I can have the eyes examined and get the proper prescription for lenses and see clearly. The universe doesn't hate me either way for it and doesn't love me more either way for it. I have to be willing to admit, a friend of mine used to say, in order to solve a problem, it helps to know what the problem is first. And so going back to the life inventory, finding out who you are now, what you like now, and what you don't like now. Don't make it a rushed job. It's not one of those one and done. But I want to encourage you. Maybe start it tonight. Maybe start it tomorrow. But, being that we're coming up on Independence Day, what a great way to celebrate independence by becoming free from the bondage you've had of self. Okay? That's something worth lighting fireworks over. So here's what I'm going to invite you to do. Take some paper, not just one piece of paper. You're going to need a few pieces of paper for this. Get something to write with. And then write a little bit about your life story. Write a little bit about what's been important to you and what's not been important to you. And then leave it there for a few days. And then I want you to go back a few days there, read it, and go through with a red pen, or any color you like, but red kind of stands out a little bit, and write what's true and not true. Some things might have been true then that aren't true now. And so check that off and write what the new information is there. That's a way of discovering where you are now. But you have to be willing to look. And it's not meant as a chore. It's meant as an act of freedom. And that's part of discovering the true self. So again, you're going to get out some paper, a few pieces of paper. You're going to write a little bit about your life story as you see it at the moment. You're going to go through about what you've liked, what you've disliked, what's important to you, what's not important to you. You're going to give it a few days to rest, and then you're going to go back, reread it, and this time with the editing pen, the red pen, and see what's still true and what's not still true. Because you'll write some stuff down that when you first write it, say, this is absolutely true. But then after a couple days of being away from it and reading it through new eyes, if you will, you'll see, okay, that might have been true then, but that's not true now. Here's what's true now. And here's what's important now. Not that the other wasn't important. It was important. It had its place. But it's changed. Could you imagine if we all stopped with our first grade education and said that's all we needed to know? Think about that. Same with our spiritual life. We go through different phases. We start off in spiritual kindergarten. Then we go to first grade. Then we go to the next grade. And our whole life is going to the next level. And there are no social promotions. Until we learn our lesson from the experience, we must re-experience the lesson. But when history repeats itself, the price goes up. Not a punishment, but because there's something in us that wants to discover all that life has to offer and what our place in that life is. I say to my counseling clients quite often, what's the reality of the situation and what's your place in that reality? Which is a question I ask myself quite often, particularly if I'm in conflict. I ask, what's the reality of the situation and what's my place in that reality? Because I have a place in it somewhere. Okay? So as I discover that, I discover more of who I really am. And I think you'll have the same experience. That as you discover these things, you'll know a little bit better who you are, what you're about, and what you're trying to become. Where you feel yourself being pulled to. Because life always pulls you forward. It never pushes you backwards. It always pulls you forward. And you don't have to push the river. It knows where it's going. Okay? So speaking of pushing the river, we're coming up to our next commercial break, and so I don't push that river. We'll continue talking about this on the other side of the break, and you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John on NBC Radio, KCAA.
SRD Heating and Air Conditioning takes this special time to salute the San Bernardino men and women in uniform who've answered the call for our freedoms. Let's give them the hero's welcome they deserve as they fought hard to restore peace around the world. American troops are our angels of protection, so stand up and salute them proudly. This message is courtesy of our good friends at SRD Heating and Air Conditioning in San Bernardino, where they're always working hard to keep our community moving in a positive direction.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
And welcome back. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around this beautiful world of ours at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. Now, some of you may be asking, why are we talking about this tonight? What difference does it make if I become my true self or not? It makes a difference to the whole world and to the universe. You may think that's a bold statement, but it is a very accurate statement. I'm going to read you something else from my book. I have to keep taking off my glasses, see? I think about the vision there. This is in the 8th chapter of my book called Race Consciousness. So I'm going to read just a couple paragraphs here. I use the term race consciousness to mean the belief system of a community, a nation, and the entire world population as a whole. Race consciousness affects all of the human population and is manifested as the conditions that the world in general is in. This affects world peace, famine, politics, and global relations. Gandhi once said in an interview, "Until each person is in touch with the part of themselves that is willing to have violence, we cannot have peace." Gandhi made a powerful statement about race consciousness when he said this. The whole world is suffering from fear. Each nation seems to view other nations as competition. We hold to the idea that we have to get them before they get us. This is a global sickness that must be healed. But how? I have heard it said that when one person raises their consciousness by the least bit, they raise the consciousness of the community around them as well. I like what Walt Disney said. It's a small world after all. And you can read the rest of it when you buy the book. Quick sales pitch there. I have to pay my own commercials here. Anyhow, so you get the idea there. If we're in fear consciousness, what are we afraid about? Afraid that we may not get something we want or lose something that we have that's important to us. We have fear of not being accepted. We have fear of not being loved. We have fear of being in danger. Now, am I going to say you should never have fear? No. Some fears are healthy. I have a fear of putting my hand in fire. Pretty darn healthy. I have a fear of playing hopscotch on a cliff. Okay, that's a healthy fear that could have quite a letdown. Sorry, I just couldn't resist. So if I'm going to improve the world, I have started improving it with me. When I was growing up, one of the songs we used to sing in church, and a lot of you are probably familiar with it, It's a song that to this day I really love. It's called Let There Be Peace on Earth and Let It Begin with Me. Let me say it again. Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And when I'm violent with myself, I'm violent with the world around me. Where am I going with that? Each of us finds conflicts within ourselves until we learn how to make friends with ourselves. You know, we teach a lot of things in school. What we don't teach is how we don't teach kids how to live within their own skin. We don't teach them how to be in love. I mean, a healthy love. I'm not talking ego. In a healthy love with the creation that they are. Instead, we teach that you have to be the fastest, with the mostest, with the bestest. You know, he who dies with the most toys wins. Well, he who dies with the most toys is still dead. Okay, I don't know what the heck you won. So, if we want to change the world, we have to change us, and that's why we have to find out who our true self is. And when you look at the peacemakers around the world, one of the things they all seem to have in common is great self-understanding. They've looked within themselves to find out what's really in there and what they need to change, not what they need to change in other people. Do you get that? I can't change you, but I can change me and how I treat you. My friend Father Tom Weston says, you know, when he talks about the Serenity Prayer, he says there's 3 things that we cannot change. Can't change the past. Can't change the truth. And I can't change you. Okay? Can't change the past. Can't change the truth. Can't change you. What does that mean? That means I have to be willing to look at what's really true. I have to accept the past is what it is. You know, a friend of mine says that a resentment is a wishing for a different past. And you can't change the past. The past is the past. You know, when you're driving and you know, you have the rear view mirror and you use it in your glass to see what's going on, you know, situation awareness. But what happens if you get focused and fixated on that rear view mirror? Pretty soon you run off the road or you hit another car because you're focused so much on what's behind you that you have no idea to see where you are or where you're headed. Well, this discovery of self is to find out where am I now and where am I headed? Do I like where I'm headed? If not, what do you need to change? What do you want to change? And then the fear comes in. Well, what if it's the wrong change? What if I change the wrong thing and this turns out to be a terrible decision? Okay. Then you look at it as a terrible decision and you turn around and you make another decision. You just do something different. I think that's one of the reasons why 12-step programs are so brilliant. They have a step for that. It's their 10th step where they said, continue to take personal inventory and when wrong, promptly admit it. And I think that's brilliant. You know, well, that's why we have confession in the church. So when we made a mistake, we could admit it and do something different. The idea is not to confess to feel guilty, okay? And there's some reasons to feel guilty sometimes. There really are. But guilt is not meant as a punishment. It's a way of letting you know, that's not working for you. That's not a good thing. That's not good for life. You know, just like the fear. You know, fear in itself is not bad. It's good it keeps you from putting your hand inside a fire. It's pretty good. I like that idea. But if we hate the fire because we're afraid, we've missed the point. Instead of having the fire work in our life, we'd rather sit in the dark and damn the darkness instead of turn on a light. You know, and even when I say that, you can hear it doesn't make much sense. But isn't that what we're doing? Right now in our country, we're in this a great deal. Everyone's so afraid. Everyone's hating everybody else. Look how divided we are. Look how if you don't agree 100% on one thing, whatever that thing may be, then suddenly that person's an enemy. Suddenly that person's evil. Suddenly that person is an idiot. Now, you hear what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying is true. And we've had more of that lately than we've ever had, which means it's time for a change. We shouldn't just say, oh, well, I'm going to stop being like that. We need to find out what's causing that. What's the fear level? You've heard me say many times, it's in my book, the 3 acronyms I use for fear: false evidence appearing real, forget everything and run, face everything and recover. So we have to look at these fears. What is it we're afraid of? What is it we're afraid we're going to lose? What is it we're afraid we're not going to get? Why are we so afraid we won't be loved? You know, I had an interesting thing this last week on one of the funerals I was being of service at. I said something that a good friend of mine, I could tell by the look on his face, just totally disagreed with. Totally. And when I saw the look on his face, I didn't have to convince him of my point. And he didn't have to try to change my mind about it. We looked at each other. We know that we both love each other very much. We just see things a little bit different on that point. Now, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? We're not all going to see things the same way. And if we're not true to who we are, we get into great fear and to great anger. And we try to deny what's going on inside us. Instead, if we can look at that, say, okay, here's a tendency I'm having inside me. How's that working for me? You can't just kick it out. You have to be aware this is what's going on. So what needs to change? This is why I'm a big believer in psychotherapy. Because the idea is to learn how to make the changes inside instead of trying to change the world. And when you make the changes inside, then what changes need to be made in the world, you're more aware of from a perspective of love, not a perspective of violence. And right now we're struggling with that in America. Well, all around the world, really, but really in America, where we live right now, we're really struggling with that because it's been easier to turn to anger and to hate rather than take a look at what's real and what's not real. And there's a lot of people right now that really are having a lot of trouble facing truth. Now, I'm not saying that to put anybody down. I've gone through my times in life where it's been tough for me too. And then when the pain got great enough, I thought, well, maybe that's just not working well. Maybe I don't have the only way of seeing this. You know? When you're always swimming against the current, you might wonder why you're tired, and then you realize, maybe I'm doing this the hard way. And so you start finding which way the river actually goes. Because the river wasn't mad at you. It was going a different direction, and you're trying to tell the river to go the direction it wasn't designed to go. So it is with our daily life. So it is with our spiritual life. You know, when we start finding these places of irritation, it's an invitation to draw us forward. Give you a little example of that. You look at an oyster. Now, you've heard me say this on the show before, but it's worth repeating. And an oyster gets a grain of sand inside it. It's irritating. But if it completes the process and allow what's supposed to happen take place and not just kick things aside because it's uncomfortable, what happens to that grain of sand when it gets really into what's supposed to be going on inside that oyster? It turns into a priceless pearl. But without that grain, that's the irritation that starts the process, which causes the oyster to salivate onto it to start the process of making a pearl. There'd be no pearl. Okay? And while it would still be an oyster, it would never get its true value as an oyster of making something beautiful. Well, the same with us, brothers and sisters. We need to spend our time discovering what are these irritations about. Is it about something's really bad, or is it trying to start something in us? Is it trying to kickstart a process which is going to turn into something very valuable in our life and in the lives of the people around us. Remember what I said in the book, when one person raises their consciousness by the least bit, they raise the consciousness of all those around them. You know, I think of the people who've impressed me in my life, they weren't the people who were always the smartest, although many of them were very smart. They were the people who were authentic. They were the people who were compassionate. They were the people who were willing to be honest with themselves about things. And man, that turned me on. I thought, I want some of that. And what did they get from that? They got a priceless gift called hope. What an incredible gift to have, hope. That's the greatest gift we can give one another, because hope comes with compassion, and compassion comes with love, and love comes with seeing people as they are, not how we would wish them to be. And it comes seeing ourselves as we are, not as we wish we could be. We're always trying to be what someone else told us we should be. We never become who we are. Look, my life started off that way. My life had a lot of different turns until I finally said, okay, where is it my heart desires for me to go? And that's how I wound up in the priesthood. That's how I wound up writing this book. That's how I wound up a lot of doors opening that would have never been opened if I had stayed on the trajectory and God wouldn't have been mad at me. I just wouldn't have become everything God wanted me to be. And I'm still developing. There's more that God wants me to be. And I have to stay tuned to see what's on the next page of this great book of life. And that's true for you as well who are listening to this. Where is your great value in the universe? Because it's there. You weren't created just for the sake of creating. You're created to make this universe even more exciting, more gracious, more invigorated. So you weren't made as a mistake. And sometimes I think we don't teach kids that. We're teaching them how to conform. And don't get me wrong, there's times to conform. There really are. It helps if we're all rowing in the same direction. Okay, unless you want your canoe to just keep going in circles. But we don't teach children, as I said earlier, how to live within their own skin, how to discover what their special light is, to find out that they have great value. And I'm not talking ego again. I'm talking that each one of us was created with purpose. The question is, are we going to follow our story or somebody else's? Because in following someone else's story, we can't be ourselves. God didn't make two of us the same. I think it's incredible that no two snowflakes are the same. My mind can't even fathom that. That's so incredible how creative the universe is. So if no two snowflakes are the same, and you don't have to know how God does that, because I don't know how God does that, but God does that, then why would you think you and I are supposed to be the same? We're not. Each one of us is an intentional expression of God's life. So discover who that loving person is inside you, because you have value. You're not listening to this program by accident. You have value, and there's a part of you that already knows this, otherwise you would never have tuned in. But there's a part of you that knows there's something great beyond what we're seeing with our eyes, something that's so magnificent, and somehow we are a part of that. So I'm inviting you to become an active participant in this wonderful, gracious thing called life. This wonderful graciousness that is called the development of spirituality, of discovering God as God expresses God's self to us, not just in one form of religion. Religion is just a place to start. It's not the place to end. It's just to get us a starting part while we are discovering all these truths. And I hope you'll share some of what your discoveries are with me. Now we're coming down to our last 30 seconds here, but I just want to make it real clear. I love you. You can't earn that. Why do I love you? because I can't love God if I don't love you. And so if I say I love God, that's synonymous with saying I love you. And so if no one's told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. And I look forward to being with you again next week. Be well and be at peace. God bless.